If you got a Chevy truck and you have bad grounds, watch this video. So a lot of guys like to add new grounds, you know, they think it's gonna fix a problem. It's not, you're just causing more problems for yourself. Let's check it out. Cat eye today, Chevrolet, and then we're doing some work over here with the Avalanche. Got the trailer loaded up, making some room. I don't want to walk too far because I got something hidden here I'm working on, but check out the Kubota excavator covered up, keeps raining. We got grounds, and more ground. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about electrical grounds today. So here we go. We have some good examples right up here. Now, these ones don't do much as far as the computer is concerned, you know. Really, if you see ones like this, these are called ground straps. Make a new one. If it's broken, put a new end on it, get you a long piece of appropriately sized gauge cable. Make a new one if you can't find a ground strap like this. They're just ring terminals. There's nothing special. It's just a wire. Connects one end to another. Same with this kind of stuff up here. You know, the hood one right here. This already broke. I made a new one. See? But these aren't going to do much for you as far as computer goes and performance goes. So, you know, there are some exceptions. I have car audio system, so I have bolstered up and done the big three, you know, to increase my grounds here so that they can pass more current to the car audio amp. That's a separate thing. So we've talked about this before, but you're gonna have two ground wires up here, top of the engine block. These cause all the problems. Check these first of any wires on these trucks. It's gonna be one right here and one back in here. You can see I've already fixed it right there in the center of the screen. That wire, it's black with a white stripe on it, and that ground goes to the top of the engine block. Just that one wire breaks, you're in a lot of trouble. The truck's not gonna run right at all. All right, so look, here's the deal. I'm gonna try my best to stay grounded throughout this video, but these ground wires are in specific locations all over the truck. You know, the negative on these trucks runs through the frame and then everything connects down to that. But some of the more dedicated sensors like the crankshaft position sensor, camshaft position sensor, these get a ground wire. They call it a low reference, really a reference to, you know, zero. It's essentially a ground. They get that through the wiring harness. That way, you know, it can't get corroded, you know, it can't mess up on you if it's that important for the engine to run. But, you know, if a ground wire breaks, one of these simple ground wires, black and white stripe, is what most of them are on these trucks. If it breaks, cut the end of that thing off, put your new ring terminal on there, a little bit of dielectric grease, and bolt it right back up where you found it. Don't try to run a new wire because you're gonna cause a ton of problems. All right, so here's a good example. This side of the ignition coil pack right here, see, it's gonna have a ground wire that runs in this loom right here. It's gonna be a black wire, and sometimes they're black with a white stripe. We call it a white tracer. There's that black wire right there. So all of these coils gotta be grounded, right? They gotta be grounded. So what you do is, at the factory, every single coil is essentially connected to the same ground wire, comes back into this harness, boom, 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 and goes down, and it terminates with a ring terminal to the side of the engine block right here. So, you know, sometimes these grounds, they terminate to the engine block, but sometimes they're hidden in the wiring loom and they go all the way to the back end of the computer, and they can be difficult to find. And then there's splice packs in here too, but basically you don't need to go digging in that. They rarely break. I've seen guys tear these wiring harnesses all apart. It's just not necessary in my mind. So like, say I pop the engine hood, ah man, broken wire, come here and say, yeah, it's broken. Make a new one, just put it back where you found it, okay? This is broken. Buy a new ground strap, hook it right back up. You're not helping yourself thinking, okay, yeah, oh yeah, see this one right here? Boom, say you found that one broken. Right there. Oh man, it's broken. Oh man, it's broken. You wanna run it back to the battery. come over here. Yep, let's go back to the battery, run you a dedicated ground. Don't do that. A lot of guys keep telling me, yeah, you know, I found this ground broken, ran me a new wire, good as new. I found this ground wire, ran me a new one, good as new. Don't do that. You can cause a ton of electrical problems on these trucks, you know, doing that kind of stuff, because these sensors and these grounds are located where they wanted them from the factory. I mean, you know, it gets really complicated. Basically, the whole truck is like a giant circuit board at this point, you know, and the main negative goes from here to the engine block, and then everything else feeds off of that. So, you know, the positive side of the DC power, you know, goes through the wires, but the grounds on these trucks, it's a negative chassis ground, which means that the whole frame of the entire truck is the ground. So basically the negative flows through the entire frame, and then, oh, we're gonna take a wire, run it to the engine. Oh, we're gonna take a wire off the frame, run it over here. Oh, you know, that kind of thing goes on throughout the whole truck, throughout the interior. So the grounds are overlooked on these. Basically, if you got a side post, you're gonna wanna make sure this thing is just, I mean, clean as can be and as tight as can be, because you don't want a bad ground on these trucks. It will cause you problems, not as many as people might think. Typically, they're broken and chewed from mice. That's what I run into. So if you start running ground wires every which way, you know, thinking you're gonna make it better than the factory, you're not, unless you're doing like car audio stuff. It's a little different, but just to get the truck to run right, if you start running grounds every which way, you can make something or create a situation where something is called a ground loop. Basically, the signal can't fully ground out, and you'll hear it through the radio. The alternator, you can hear that through the radio, that sort of thing goes on. Guys run ground wires every which way, you know, trailer lights aren't working. Man, run a dedicated ground all the way from the battery. You know, stuff like that goes on, causes a whole bunch of other problems. So basically, wherever that ground is from the factory, you wanna just clean up the spot it is, already located, and put your new ring terminal on there, a little dielectric grease, bolt it back up, and forget about it. And that should fix the problem 99% of the time. So, you know, I wish on these trucks, I really do, that the ground wires were just located in the wiring loom and every sensor was grounded out. I mean, it would be too much wiring, I guess, is why they do like this, you know. At least Chevy. Here's a good example right there on the left of the screen. There is a black wire going into the mass airflow. That is a ground. That is a dedicated ground that is ran in the wiring loom just like that. And yeah, that one right there, if it's broken, I believe it goes up to either that one right there or the other one on this side. If that, you know, ground is broken, your mass airflow sensor is not going to work right, and the truck will not run right at all just because one wire is broken. Ridiculous, but that's what you're dealing with on these trucks. It's not that bad. You find one, it's broken, get it fixed up. All right, so here's a perfect example right here. So these grounds are on the red cat eye under the driver's side door, and that is a thick ground wire. Oh boy, a lot of currents going through that thing. That's for the fuel pump. So, you know, if the fuel pump's not working right, guys are tempted to just cut it, run it straight to the battery. Don't do it. There's no problem with these grounds down here. The problem is they get corroded, and when they get corroded, you know, a rusty truck, northern truck, you get a bad ground, the fuel pump doesn't work right. So all you gotta do is cut the connector off and get your new ring terminal easy, crimp, solder, heat shrink, you know, do it how you like. Put a new ring terminal on there, bolt it back to the same location, rust-free, corrosion-free, and the thing will work right. You don't gotta run a new wire all the way to the battery. It's just causing more headache, more trouble, more work than is needed. All right, so we got like CB radio, right? This thing is old, like 15 years old. I run a ground directly to the battery because, you know, that's how you do with accessories and things like that. And then like, here we go, the radio. Installed this thing a long time ago, but works flawlessly. It's got a ground in the wiring harness, in the wiring loom. It eventually goes back to the battery. You know, that's how they designed it. Things like, you know, the dash and things, you know, there's always a ground pin on connectors where it's necessary enough to have that good of a ground. It runs all the way back to the computer. I'll show you the back of the computer wiring. I'm about to go grab a wiring harness here just to show you. But yeah, you put an aftermarket stuff in here, dedicated ground to the battery, go for it. You're trying to fix up what's already here on the truck, the sensors, better off fixing what's already there. So everybody's gonna be like, Matt, you explained it. We wanna know how to fix it. I'll show you how to fix them here, hold on. I'm looking through the wiring harness that I have here off of the Chevy Avalanche, the original engine that was, well, the donor engine. I'll show you some grounds. This thing is cut up, but it's a good example of all the ground wires. All right, so here's wiring loom. Black with a white tracer, black, white tracer, yep. These are dedicated grounds running through this big old wiring loom like this that goes on top of the engine. Here's one right here. This one's kind of brown with a white stripe on there. On these trucks, look for black with a white stripe, white tracer, and I don't know what any of these go to, but if we needed to, we could figure it out. Some of these are low reference. You could call it a low reference to ground. Basically, it tells the computer, hey, this is 0, you know, volts. Here we go, right at the back of the computer. Look at all of those ground wires right there. Ooh, boy. We hit the gold mine. So all of these go to sensors. There's no telling what they go to. You know, you can look up the pinout and figure it out, but yeah, black, white stripe, all of these. This is a blue connector right here. You can see there's all those black and white stripes are dedicated grounds that go to sensors. So really a lot of these chassis grounds and things like that are more about getting rid of noise. It gets into electronic engineering, you know. It's beyond my comprehension at this point, but on some of these, yep, see, they're all together in a line right here. So on some of these, the ground is so important, they run it back to the computer. But the chassis grounds are the easiest to fix. Now, if one of these is broken from here to the sensor, you need to run a dedicated ground back to here, snip it, and run you a dedicated ground, but that's rare. All right, so if you want to figure out where these ground wires go, you can look up a pinout depending on the year. 1999 to like 2002, it's going to be a green and blue connector. And then 2003 to 2007, it's going to be a red and blue connector. You need to look up the pinout and figure out, all right, yeah, pin number, whatever, 71, black, white stripe, ground, goes to crankshaft position sensor or whatever. Goes to, you know, throttle body, mass airflow sensor, whatever it goes to. And then if you need to, you can see if you have continuity from the back of the computer all the way to that sensor, or you can just run a wire from the back of the computer all the way to the sensor or wherever it terminates. That way you can fix the broken ground wire that way. But you really need to figure out, why is the ground bad? Why did it break? Is it corroded? Is there water getting in there? You know, something goes on to cause these grounds to go bad. They don't just mysteriously go bad. And a lot of times it's from vibration. The wires are moving around and rubbing, and mice. Mice are the #1 culprit why you have a bad ground. They chew up the ground wires and they cause me all sorts of problems. All sorts of problems. If it wasn't for mice, you know, you'd have half the trucks to work on these electrical problems. I mean, it's that bad. Let's take a look at some ring terminals, give you some tips on those. So, on these trucks, man, finding the right ring terminal to replace, you know, one that's just super rusted and corroded and just, man, you know, it can be difficult because you need one with a big enough hole to put a bolt through. So typically on these trucks, they bolt to the frame, and you need one that's got a big enough hole to bolt through. But what happens is, the bigger the hole here, typically it's a heavier gauge wire, so, you know, sometimes you got to get creative to find the right ring terminal. So, and assortments like this are pretty much useless for chassis grounds on these trucks. You know, I'll even take one like this and I'll drill it out, you know, the next size up to get it to fit on a bolt or a nut or whatever, a stud, whatever I got to get it on. And, you know, I'll take the plastic off and I'll crimp it and solder it and heat shrink it. You know, I found these, they're pretty good. These are heavier duty for chassis grounds. I like the thicker ones. These are more of a lug style, not so much a ring terminal. These are more of a lug, and these can be good because they have a larger hole. But then again, you know, most of these wires are pretty thin on these trucks for grounds, so sometimes you got to get creative. You got to go through the ring terminals, find you one. I mean, I've been known to take them off of old wiring harnesses where it's got the proper ring terminal. I've seen some of them have a really big bolt going through it, and you just got to clean up the ring terminal. I mean, sometimes that's what you're stuck doing, cleaning up the wire that's on there, and just, you know, hopefully it doesn't have a bunch of corrosion wicked down into the connector. But finding the right ring terminal is half the battle on these trucks, honestly, once you find the bad ground. All right, I'm gonna show y'all how I get these ring terminals soldered up. Let's check it out. All right, so now on these, I make sure to get the copper super clean. Then I put me a ring terminal on there like that with a piece of heat shrink, and I'm gonna crimp it and solder it, and that's gonna hold up to whatever we needed to do, wherever we need to bolt it up. As long as it's the right size ring terminal, we'll be good to go. So let me get this soldered up. I'll show you what it looks like. So, you know, we're gonna get it crimped up. Okay, I'm gonna get this thing soldered up. Hard to do on camera. Get this thing soldered up, and I will show y'all the final product here. All right, let's get some heat to it. Like this, get it heat shrunk, and this thing will be good to go. This is how you do it on the truck. This is how I do it. I fix them up on the truck like this all the time. Works great. Put some dielectric grease on here. There's no problems. All right, there we go. The ground's fixed, bolted up. You'll be back in action. You're not gonna have any more ground problems from the broken wire any longer if you get it fixed up like this. So, moral of the story, don't run new grounds. Don't run new grounds. Do not run new grounds. Power wires are okay to run new. You know, I mean, if there's a fault between the ends of the wires, the sensor, and the battery, you need to find where it's broken and fix it. I mean, you know, for dedicated electronics, CB radio, car audio amps, any kind of accessories, you get a dedicated ground. But for these trucks, the sensors, they really don't like dedicated grounds. I mean, everything basically just grounds out to the engine for sensors, and then the engine grounds out to the battery and to the chassis is how they did it. Don't ask me. But that's your video for today. Don't move your ground wires. Just fix what's there, and you should be back running great in no time. I will check you on the next video. Don't forget to drop me a huge thumbs up down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more Chevy truck tip videos in the future. Later.